How would you feel this morning if you're Eric Spoelstra about what happened last night?
I'm encouraged because that was a game that Miami, by and large, dictated the terms of engagement. Like the complexion of the game, the pace of the game was one that favors Miami. I mean, we know that Miami doesn't have the firepower offensively that the Nuggets do. Yet you saw the scoring. The game was in the low 100s. I mean, Denver scored 104 points. Like that, if you told me that Denver scored 104 points in game one, I would say that that's a game that the Miami Heat should win. And if the Miami Heat knocked down open shots, they would have won. On open three-pointers last night, the Miami Heat shot 5 of 17 from distance. Now, for contrast or context.
This game was going to get out of hand, but it never fully did because the Miami Heat were able to cut it to 9 late. They end up losing by 11, 104-93 in Denver in game one. But I don't feel like this was an abject nightmare for the Miami Heat at all. They don't come out of this game feeling like they can't win this series. At least if I'm Eric Spoelstra, that's the way I would feel today because I played good enough defense. I limited them to 104 points, and I just didn't make open shots.
Well, here's where I'll push back. I think it was a blowout. I mean, the Denver Nuggets essentially led wire to wire. I mean, the only time the Miami Heat led was in the early minutes of the game. The game spent the majority of the time with it being, a 14 to 16-point margin. I think the lead for the Denver Nuggets got as big as 24. So it didn't necessarily feel like the Miami Heat threatened the Nuggets, even though they were able to cut it to single digits involved.
I mean, it's funny, Chris. His positioning on the floor is a metaphor for their entire offense in that he is the center of it in every single way. And when you watch him at the free throw line or at the top of the key, that's exactly what he is. He's in the middle of all of it. And he is not afraid to set screens. He will do whatever he needs to do to find the winning play and to find not just the good shot, but the great shot. If the great shot happens to be with him, he'll take it. And it's hard to imagine that you're really going to be able to do a whole lot that's going to shut him down. But I would say this. The most damaging part of his game to me has to do with making everybody else better. So there is, and I'm not Eric Spoelstra, but there would be a temptation on my part to let him go out and get his, especially early in a game, so that I don't allow everybody else to get into a rhythm early.
No, I don't.
What do you think?
Here's the problem with that. We know the guy can put up 50 points, and that can lead to a Nuggets win, too. Like, we've seen Jokic do it both ways throughout the regular season and the postseason, and I guess that's the challenge when offset that is knocking down three-point shots, especially open looks, and they didn't do a good job of that last night. And the combination of guys from Caleb Martin to Duncan Robinson to Max Strus, they were absolutely awful. Those three combined to be 2 of 23 from the field and 2 of 16 from three-point land. If that's how those guys are going to shoot, then Jay Williams is right. The Miami Heat going to get swept. They have no shot. If they don't knock down three-point shots, they cannot win this series. That has been the biggest differentiating factor from the team that we saw in the postseason versus the Heat team that we saw in the regular season. They got to make shots. They got to knock down threes. If they don't, they have no chance of competing at the same level as Denver is.
Here's Eric Spoelstra on what went wrong
could
last
look
night.
different. If a few of these threes go down at the right time, a few of the layups, right at the rim, or the short ones go down at the right time, that also could kind of change your perspective or tenor of how you think things are going. But we do need to do things better. I think that part is clear.
Look, it's going to be very difficult to try to find ways to guard Jokic.
Get 20 assists and his scoring is going to be down, relatively speaking, then he'll do that. He's okay with that. I don't know many superstars that okay that in game one of the NBA Finals, in his franchise's first NBA Finals appearance, is willing to only take 5 shots through the first 3 quarters of said game and be perfectly fine with that. But that's what Nikola Jokic showed yesterday. And so from a mindset standpoint, you have to really appreciate that this dude is as selfless as they come. And for a player of his ilk, an MVP caliber talent, a guy that's in the conversation for best player in the world, you're not accustomed to seeing that type of mindset. We talk about how much of the mindset the Jimmy Butler sets for the Miami Heat and how that kind of sets the tone for that entire franchise. Well, Nikola Jokic does a similar thing for the Denver Nuggets, especially how they work on the offensive end. So, I mean, last night left me with a deeper appreciation in the half-court offense early on in that game as well.
Canty and Carlin, ESPN Radio, in for Greeny.
Canty and Carlin,
Aggressive and look, the Heat have got to be more aggressive. They are just settling for way too many jump shots last night. And I'm not going to get nuts on the officiating. The Heat didn't do enough to warrant getting to the free throw line.
Yeah.
You have to attack more to get to the free throw line. And it makes me think that as we move forward, you start to hear the stories about Tyler Hero potentially returning.
The size disparity, especially with the frontline players for the Denver Nuggets, those guys can position themselves for deep catches in the paint and make plays at the rim. And we saw it in the first quarter with Aaron Gordon. How many times did Aaron Gordon get matched up against smaller guys? I mean, there was one time where he pinned Gabe Vincent under the basket, and there was nothing Gabe Vincent could do. And Nikola Jokic hits him with a perfect pass. It seemed like that happened all night through the first three quarters of that game. And then when it got to the point in the fourth quarter where it was closing time, Jokic took it upon himself to take care of business. Now, the other part that makes Jokic difficult to defend that way is Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray last night, especially in the first half, got it going, and that takes a lot of pressure off of Jokic in terms of feeling like he has to score. Murray had 18 of his 26 points in the first half of that game. So any strategy that Eric Spoelstra comes up with in Game 2 has to involve not only how to going into the third, fourth,